Well, hello, my Jedi friends. Today I decided it's time for a Jedi mind trick. Time for a Jedi mind trick. It is indeed. So I decided to go live because this is an interesting time of the day and you never know who's going to show up. But the whole Jedi mind trick thing, now I do it with my friends, so we have a bit of a laugh with it. But Jedi mind trick is easy to do because it is all about state of mind and it's a state of energy. So I've been having the debate, having the discussion today. How do you change your energy? How do you instantly change your energy? You know, that Jedi mind trick. Is it possible to be in a certain vibe and to instantly change it? So I've been having this discussion today. And the way to find out what changes your vibe, what is your Jedi mind trick, is to find something that uplifts you every time you do it. Every time you do it. Now, that might be a certain person that you speak with. It might be a phone call to someone. It might be an activity. It might be going live on YouTube. So this does it for me. I enjoy doing a live. So for me, it's almost like a Jedi mind trick just to get on a live stream and just go for it and start riffing and have fun with it. So whatever does it for you, it's important to know. It's important to know how to get yourself out of a low energy place. And that is your Jedi mind trick. Now, certainly with things like the news, we've got the negativity bias. So the negativity bias means that we're addicted to bad news. That most people, in fact, everybody, it's been proven, my Jedi friends, that people are addicted to bad news. So if you saw headlines, for example, so it could be, you could get 3 headlines. It might be, you know, somebody has just cured cancer, or they've just they've got better after being diagnosed with cancer, or there's a bombing the other side of the world, or there's been a mass shooting. Now, which headline are you drawn to? Now, I'm not going to make any assumptions, but what would be the first one you think, oh, I've got to read about that? Most people are addicted to bad news, and that is the negativity bias. The thing that would influence us the most is usually not positive, and that is something that's been studied. A research study has been done on this. Has been done on people that on what people are drawn towards, whether it's positive or negative, and it has shown something, and that's called the negativity bias. It's been well studied, it's been well documented. So when we work with energy, we're working against society, we're working against a whole system, a whole setup that leans towards people feeling negative or being drawn to negativity. So when we talk about Jedi mind trick, when we work with energy, it's to have your anchor, your default setting, something that you can do every time that works to uplift you. So I have got Grizzly Gurr in the house. Hello, Adam. I made it to the live. Well, fair play, Grizzly. You're the first one in. You're the first one through the doors. It's always good to see my Jedi friends turn up to these lives. So I thought I'd create some sort of mad clickbaity title today, Grizzly. Oh, Jedi mind trick. Is he really a Jedi? What is that all about? What does that even mean? Who does he think he is? I know, I'm sort of inviting in the trolls, aren't I? Inviting them in, see where they go. But I'll summarize this video in right now. So everything that I talk about, we'll summarize it in a couple of sentences. So your Jedi mind trick is to find something that every time you do it, it raises your vibration, your energy, and makes you feel better. Every time. So everyone, if you ask them, has an activity. If you dig deep enough, something that when you do it, every time you feel better. Now, that could be something simple like calling your mate. There's certain friends, I know that I've got certain friends that I can guarantee every time I call them, that it's going to be an uplifting conversation and we're probably going to have a laugh. So that to me is like a Jedi mind trick. If I find myself in a low vibe, I have a way out. I've actually got several ways out. So doing a live stream is one of them. That's a place where it would just transform my energy when I'm doing live presenting, stuff like this, or just riffing, or just talking about energy, because I love talking about energy. I love helping people to understand what it is and how it works. So that's me. That's something that I can do. It might be traveling, might be booking a holiday or booking a trip to go and see a friend that I haven't seen for ages. Straight away, energy will spike. So the thing is with energy, it's not anything esoteric or mystical. It's find things that make you feel better. And that's how we roll on the energy train. And that's what it's all about. So if you can get it, if you can find an activity or a person or something that every time that you do it or you speak with them or you go down that path, it makes you feel good, then there's your Jedi mind trick. So there you go. There's the content of the entire video. I've just given it away straight away. So you don't need to watch anymore. This is just going to be me riffing for the rest of the video. Of course, you're welcome to ask any questions on that, because I may have overly simplified the concepts of the Jedi mind trick here, my Jedi friends. So when I explain energy, yes, there are techniques. Yes, we ground ourselves. Yes, you connect to a source above and below. Yes, you can clear your energy field. These are all techniques that really help you. But from a very basic point of view, without going to any trainings, without doing any study, without doing anything, you know when you've been with someone or in a situation that raises your vibe. And you know if you've been in a situation or with someone that lowers your vibe. It's that simple. And the things that raise your vibe are the places or the things or the people that you want to be spending more time with. And things that lower your vibe are the places, the people and things you want to be spending less time with. So there you go. It's not actually a trick at all. It's setting your diary or prioritizing things that raise your vibe. Now, this channel is specifically really aimed at highly sensitive people or good people or people that have the capacity to be people pleasers in their life. And we're going up to a point now. Some call it the awakening, some call it a vibrational shift, some call it the point of no return. You know, there's loads of things that you could call this. But people that have been for most of their lives fitting in, being all things to everything, being selfless, giving, doing a lot for others. This is what the awakening is, or what the vibrational shift is an invitation to start prioritizing your own energy. And contra to your instincts, it's time to be a little bit more selfish. Now, this is an interesting theme that runs through a lot of these, a lot of the videos that I do. You know, to be selfless, to be more selfless, you have to be more selfish. You've got to be more selfish, my Jedi friends. And when I say selfish, I mean prioritizing your own energy, saying no to things that don't uplift you, not spending time with people that are going to drain your energy, not being that emotional dumping ground that people have taken for granted up until now. Perhaps. Maybe they don't take you for granted, but they're still dumping you anyway. But either way, you know what drains your energy down. You know what raises your energy up. And this whole Jedi mind trick thing is about prioritizing, spending more time with things that raise your energy. Thinking about things that raise your energy, this is where it's at. It's there, my Jedi friends. You're going to spend more time raising your energy and spending time with people that raise your energy, that help to increase the frequency of your vibration and your mood, really. Just follow your mood. So, emotion. Let's talk about energy, emotion. Your emotions are there to guide you. You have an emotional guiding system. And within that system, there's no such thing as a negative emotion. No such thing. It's there to guide you. And if you're feeling what you perceive as a negative emotion, all that is your guidance system telling you this isn't working. Get me out of here. Beam me up, Scotty. Beam me up, Scotty. I'm not liking this situation or being with this person because my energy is being pulled down. Emotion, energy, emotion. Your emotions are telling you, get out. This doesn't feel well. It feels heavy, feels dense. You might feel it within your body that this is something that you don't like. And not only that, you may have spent a lifetime just accepting that that's a normal thing. Sometimes people just have to dump. Sometimes people have to vent. Sometimes people are in a low energy. Sometimes you hang out with your mates. You know, it's good to be able to do that occasionally, but not every time. This is the whole point. Not every time. And this is where being a little bit more selfish comes into the equation. So Grizzly's back, being trapped in Fig H. Well, I don't know what Fig H is, Grizzly, but fair play. Oh, fight or flight trap. Yes. So fight or flight is a stress response, and a stress response is raised by the body when you're in a situation that you don't like or you don't want to be in, or you're stressed. Now, interestingly enough, because I used to train people in stress management, and the big issue with fight or flight is that the brain hasn't learned to distinguish between a threat to our life and someone pissing us off. So you get the same emotional response if someone pisses you off as you do as your body reacting to a fight for your life. This is stress management 101. You know, it could be slow internet, could be your stress response, and you've got a fight or flight reaction for your life. So Tom Mack is in the house. Well, welcome back, Tom. I don't care if you're Muhammad, I'm hard Bruce Lee. That snap was is hilarious. Well, I was wondering how long it would take me to be taken down a segue. Well, Tom, I'm glad you enjoyed Snatch Wars probably as much as I did when I first watched it. Now, that is a segue off to a previous stream, so I'm going to have to explain myself for anyone on this stream that's new. These streams start off almost serious, and we talk about serious energy topics, well, stuff that could be considered to be serious. And I do teach energy work, and I'm pretty damn good at it because I've been doing it for decades. But my whole angle is doing things with a lighter vibe, a lighter vibe. And for that reason, when I'm on these streams and we talk about energy stuff, we could get segued down a completely different rabbit hole. And I just learned to go with the flow of that. And Tom's been on a few of my lives, and we've had a lot of fun going down different rabbit holes. And one of them was, we've been talking, of course, we've got the Jedi Mindtrick here and the vibe. And we were talking about a film called Snatch, which is where Brad Pitt plays a pikey. It's a brilliant, iconic film. And some genius has taken the principal villain in Snatch, who's a bit of a geezer, and transcribed his personality and his lines on Darth Vader. And there's a video on YouTube called Snatch Wars, which if you've seen Snatch and you've seen Star Wars, you'll love it. And Tom clearly loves it because he's given me quotes from it. They go through bone like butter. Yes. It's brilliant. Go through bone like butter. I think they use that quote twice in the little clip as well, don't they? It's classic stuff, Tom. Classic. Absolutely classic stuff. Snatch Wars. It's a winner. So I used to, here's something, a complete mad segue. So my family have never understood anything that I do, really. Oh, Tammy's in the house. I've always been an outspoken person, to say the least. I speak up for the underdog. I call BS BS, no matter who is serving it up. So is this positive or negative in energy? So Tammy, well, everything, of course, is context dependent. I would say generally, yes. So from your own energy perspective, It's if you're tolerating bad behavior for the greater good, that's a terrible thing. I mean, it might be good in certain contexts. So let's get the context. It's really important to get the context for this. The energy work I generally refer to is dealing with characters that you know. You know the personalities, usually your families, usually your boss. They're usually the main protagonists when we're dealing with energy issues over time. Now, if you're drunk in a pub, that's a very different situation. So all of the stuff that I talk about, if you're in a room full of strangers calling out people, that's a little bit more risky. That could end up with a knife in your belly or even worse, in your throat or whatever it is. So, you know, all of the stuff that I talk about, Tammy, has to be context dependent. And I do feel I need to give that sort of disclaimer. So if you're dealing with strangers, it's always good to exercise caution. If you're dealing with frequent offended narcissists, especially within your family or your workplace, then that is what I'm talking about. And I would argue that calling out BS in those situations is your friend. Because what you'll do when you're known for calling out BS, especially if you're generally an empath, and you maybe don't have a track record for your life or your younger years of doing it, people get used to the fact that they can say what they want to you and almost be a dumping ground for their BS. You'd be a BS dumping ground for other people. And so it does serve you well to be a little bit prickly occasionally and to let people know that if they're going to come and dump their BS on you, they're going to get some retribution. Now, Tom will understand this. Do you know what nemesis means? A righteous infliction of retribution administered by an appropriate agent. In this case, an horrible, and I can't say the next word on this stream because apparently it's supposed to be offensive in the English language. Tom knows the score and says, ha ha. So yes, here I am at this stage in life. Now, in my younger years, I would just walk away. I was very high vibe and I just didn't need conflict and it just didn't seem like it was appropriate. But as I get older now, I realize that there's certain frequent offenders came into my life and I was tolerating the same BS frequently. And what you realize, well, what I realize as I get older is that life's too short to deal with this nonsense on repeat. So in that instance, it's an absolute superpower to call out BS, to absolutely call it out and to make people feel uncomfortable and to let them know that if they ever do it again, they're in for some pain. You're going to call them out in public. It's usually narcissists that do this stuff, and narcissists hate to lose their public image. So they do it one-on-one because they know they can get away with it. But if there's an audience and there's a narcissist in the house, the best thing you can do as an empath is make them look like the idiot that they are publicly. That is like kryptonite to a narcissist. Kryptonite. They hate that. If you get people laughing at them because you're able to turn around their BS, that is absolute kryptonite to a narcissist. So I say call it out. Call it out, my Jedi friends. Be that little bit prickly when you're dealing with idiots that are looking to get cheap shots because they know you won't retaliate. So my dad actually said something to me that was very wise, and coming from my dad, that was always interesting because he was the joker, he was the comedian, he was the master of turning around an argument and making people laugh. And a lot of people looked at him as a bit of a fool. My dad was anything but, and he told me something. Occasionally we get these snippets of genius that he used to come out with. And one of the most genius things my dad said to me was that it takes a wise man to act the fool. Because people will confuse being nice with being stupid or being an easy target. And so people will get drawn into thinking that they can take the piss out of you. And you just keep handing them rope, you keep handing them rope, you keep handing them rope. And then one day you deliver their arse on a plate because they didn't see it coming. They thought you were the easy target. And then suddenly, bang, you become their nemesis. Do you know what nemesis means? Tom is back, mate. I can't stop watching Snatch Wars. Pass me the shooter. I can see people will be peeling off this stream now, looking up Snatch Wars on YouTube, and I absolutely recommend that everyone does that. If you're a fan of Snatch, that sounds so wrong. The film Snatch and Bricktop. So Snatch fans all over the net will know what I'm talking about. They've created Brick Vader, as Tom says. Brick Vader. He's absolutely brilliant. He's a character. He's a Jedi character that everyone needs to get to know. Because once you've got Brick Vader as one of your archetypes, you'll never need another nonsense dealing with character in your life, because they combine the absolute gutter mouth of Bricktop and the Jedi mastery of Darth Vader. And if you can combine that, you've got a Jedi superpower. It's an absolute superpower. So there you go. There's probably a few of them thinking, what is this Snatch Wars? What is Tom talking about? What is Adam and Tom talking about? They've got no idea what this was. Something about Jedis. How did Snatch get into the equation? Well, if you haven't seen it, my Jedi friends, you'll never know it. And Tom says, superpower. Ha ha. You know the score, Tom. You know how it cuts through bone like butter. It cuts through BS like butter. That's what it does. So yes, you need to become Brick Vader. That's how you develop a Jedi mind trick. If you can emulate Brick Vader in any given situation, I promise you, no one is ever going to mess with you again. You know, combining those set of Jedi skills with the no nonsense put downs, that is it. You've hit nirvana as far as Jedi mastery is concerned, because not only have you got the Jedi skill, you have got the vocabulary and the absolute zero tolerance for tomfoolery to deal with any given situation in your life. So, like Tom said, try not to think, Harold. Do you harm? See, Tom has been infected by Snatch Wars now. He'll never be the same again. And that's the danger of coming on these streams. I might send you in a direction that's going to change your psyche. It's going to change you. You're going to be a changed person. There you were, innocently minding your own business. And suddenly you tuned into this random live stream and life has never been the same again. Who would have predicted it? And over something so seemingly ridiculous as well, like a video called Snatch Wars. It has to be done, my Jedi friends. It has to be done. And actually, at the core of all of this, you know, just to energize what we're actually putting out here now, if you are that person, that has been dealing with these nonsense things, like the energy of fun and humor is your way out. It's like a superpower weapon in dealing with life. Take everything else out. It's like a life skill. Learning to laugh, have fun, take the piss out of you and your mates, even in the darkest situations. Well, it was a skill set that we had to learn in my days in nursing. because we were seeing like really serious stuff. People were committing suicides, let's just call it. And I'm not talking about the patients. I'm talking about some of the staff because they couldn't handle what we are having to deal with on a daily basis. We had a couple of actual suicides of people in the sets around me, and we had a couple of attempted suicides as well. So, you know, when you're working on the sharp end of the health service, it can affect you. And the superpower skill is humor. You have to learn to laugh at even the darkest stuff. And that's why we end up going down segues on these videos. If I find something that makes me laugh, then we're off. We're off down a rabbit hole, my Jedi friends, and I make no apology for it. You've got to keep your sense of humor on this journey. It's an essential tool that we have to maintain for our sanity, for our Jedi sanity, my Jedi friends. That's what we need. And to those of you new that haven't come across the Snatch Wars video, well, you're in for an absolute treat. Or maybe you'll just think, why did I even go on here? If you never watched Snatch, you'll never know. So Chantal is in the house. Hi, Adam. Joined at the right time. Snatchgate. You have indeed, Chantal, my Jedi friend. And for everybody else in the house, Chantal is one of my Jedi, my Jedis. She's been through a Jedi training academy. So I've seen her in action. I've watched her develop, and look at her with a nice, healthy sense of humor. Has now created Snatchgate. Maybe I'll have to change the title of this video, the Snatchgate scandal. I actually think that could be a great title for a YouTube video. Maybe that's the next one. Chantal, you're a genius. You should be in marketing if you're not already. So yes, I love that. It's Tom's fault. Tom jumped in and took me down a segue. There I was talking about like almost serious energy stuff, and we ended up down a rabbit hole, didn't we? Didn't we, Tom? It's your fault. I was going off giving people real information, giving them actual techniques they could use, and then suddenly Brick Vader entered the building. Cuts through bone like butter. Tom says, sorry, mate. Well, don't be, Tom. You know I'm taking the piss. And anyone that can make me laugh on my streams is welcome back. And yes, not everyone might have the same sense of humor as us. But I don't really care, Tom, because if you haven't got a sense of humor, you probably should get off this stream. Because yes, I can help you to, you know, learn a few serious things or two about energy, and we can go down that route. But we need plenty of capacity to be able to go down rabbit holes, especially if they could be humorous, because you need to have a sense of humor. So speaking of need to have a sense of humor, I've always found, like, in as caveats, like, are people open, or do they have a sense of humor? And back in the day, before any of my mates got married, and I'm going back a few decades now, I used to wake up one day, talk about things that make you feel better. I'd wake up one day and I'd think, because my friends moved all over the world. So a lot of them moved to Ireland. I'd one in Scotland. I'd had a couple living in Europe. And, you know, I'd be keeping in contact with them every now and again on the phone. But it was nice to be able to meet up. And rather than me think, oh, who am I going to go and visit this weekend? I decided I'd wake up one day. And I did this probably about 20 times in my life. I'd wake up one day and I'd think, right, I'm going to find somewhere that I've never heard of. I used to go on Ryanair or EasyJets and find flights that were flying from Dublin, from Belfast, from London as a bare minimum. And I'd book a flight for a long weekend. I'd go for 4 days. I'd probably get there on a Thursday and I'd come back on a Monday. And then I'd book a hotel, and I'd send the details of the hotel and the flight to all of my mates and said, I'm going to be there for this weekend. And I had one rule for these weekends. It's like you had to bring a wig, because we had a night where we were all doing an alter ego evening. And I said, you can bring anyone you want, but tell them they've got to bring the wig. And that wig and that alter ego night out, apart from the fact people still mention those nights out, especially alter ego nights, even now, decades later, because they were legendary. It used to filter out if people were bringing new people to that mix. We'd know that they had a sense of humor. And I met some brilliant new people because friends invited friends. And we'd had an alter ego night that was they were some of the funniest nights I ever had. They were brilliant fun. So Tammy says, I'll be watching Snatch Wars later. Well, Tammy, you're in for an absolute treat. So Tom says, is right, Tammy. Tammy, it's a treat. If you've seen Snatch and you've seen Star Wars, then you've got to watch Snatch Wars. It's the natural progression. And it's sheer editing genius to ever put that together. It's right up there with Star Wars and with Nail and I, especially the one they did, a 2-minute video they did where they turned Yoda into the drug dealer. Turning Yoda into a drug dealer. How innovative was that? It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So there you go, my Jedi friends. We keep a healthy sense of humor on this thread. Yes, we can teach like serious energy techniques that can change your life. That's what I do. That's what I do for a living. That is my life. But to my knowledge, I'm the only person that teaches energy techniques, adding this much humor into the mix. And with the capacity to go down these mad rabbit holes, because having fun is a massive part of energy, my Jedi friends, a massive, massive part. Keeping your sense of humor is one of the biggest tools, not just in energy, in life. In life, if you're able to laugh at yourself, riff with your friends. And in fact, I saw some research that said that friends that take the piss out of each other, that they banter, they basically call each other names or whatever it is that comes with that, they have much stronger friendships. That's part of the deal. They have a lot stronger bond because of it. So there you go, my Jedi friends. Validation that being able to laugh at yourself and your mates and take the piss out of them is not just a good thing for life, it's a good thing for your friendships. Because let's face it, you need a certain level of comfort to be able to take the piss out of your friends, and you know they're your real friends once you've hit that sweet spot. So one of those things being manifested. I was actually telling my mate today about why we do fantasy football. So I'm in a fantasy football league, and I play football with a bunch of lads on a Monday. And there's about 20 of them that play fantasy football each season. And I've won the wooden spoon for a couple of seasons now, which means I've finished bottom out of 20 because I never took fantasy football seriously. And a lot of my mates did. These guys, they sleep, breathe, and eat football statistics to get their team to optimal levels. But for me, it's about the banter and the fun that comes with it. So this season, I've started my own fantasy football league, and I've only invited lunatics to join in, like absolute loons. And the fun that we've had, there's not been a game played yet. The fun that we're having, just sort of riffing with each other about the teams that we support, who's going in the team. That's what it's about. Having that outlet, having that place that you can go and you know that you can have a bit of fun, that you can take the piss out of a few people and their teams or their team selections or all the other things. And knowing that I'll probably be quite low down the league, so that I'm teeing myself up for this. But it's all good, friendly fun, my Jedi friends, because you don't have to win at everything in life to be a winner. And that's a classic example, because we have such a laugh that I will win, whether you win, lose or draw in the league. And let's face it, no one actually wins anything for winning the league. They don't actually win anything except their own pride and their own sense of righteous well-being that they were able to beat a bunch of lunatics in a fantasy football game. So there you have it. There is where it's at. My Jedi friends, that is a Jedi mind trick in itself. It's a proper Jedi mind trick. So the question I'm going to throw out there is, when you need to raise your vibe, what do you do? Who do you go to? What do you spend your time doing? And it's good that I ask you this, because sometimes you actually need to verbalize it or need to think about this thing. If I need to change my energy quickly and I need to raise my vibe, what am I doing? There's the question to ask yourself. What do you do that always makes you feel better? It's worth thinking about. That's actually a really powerful question. Once you understand that there's certain things that every time that you do them, you feel better because of it, life gets easier and you're more likely to be able to instantly change your energy state. Even if you're having a really rough time, really rough day, even if you're sitting there completely drained, that there's something that you can do that will instantly raise your vibration and your energy level. That's where it's at. That's where it's at, my Jedi friends. You've got to know what energizes you, what activities, spending time with which people make you instantly raise your vibration, your energy. You feel good. And you don't have to have studied any energy system to understand how this works. Some people make you feel energized and other people will drain you. Radiators and drains and radiators. And do people fall into the radiator category or the drain category? Do certain situations fall into the radiator category or the drain category? So knowing which is which and how they vibe, that's a really important thing. It's really important to know these things, my Jedi friends. Yes, we need to know these things. And taking time out to just know absolutely what raises your energy, and then just to do it more often. It sounds so simple. Adam, that sounds so simple. Because it is, my Jedi friends. But the trouble is that when we get caught, especially people that are sensitive to energy, when you get caught in a low energy place, there's part of you thinking, I don't want to inflict my low energy on anyone else. When in actual fact, your good mates will want to help you to raise your vibe if you're in a low energy place. Because here's something, let's go to the absolute max here. Oh, he's going to talk about serious stuff. There's a serious content alert coming up, my Jedi friends, a very serious topic we're about to address. That there's so many people that don't reach out to help, and especially blokes here. They wouldn't want to inflict their friends with their low energy. They wouldn't want to admit defeat. They wouldn't want to say that I'm in a low vibe place. And that is why suicide rates in men are 3 times higher than they are in women, which is why it's really important to have a mate that you can reach out to, even if your vibe isn't high. Sometimes just someone to listen can make the difference. So there you go, finding out who your mates are. And there'll be mates that you can riff with and banter with and call them whatever in fantasy football situations or social situations. But they'll also be happy to help you out of a low vibe space. Now, we all have a low vibe time occasionally. This isn't about being happy, clappy, or toxically positive all the time. You know, for me personally, if I go into a low vibe place, I like to spend time on my own to just feel it for a while. So my instinct isn't to reach out and tell someone about it. No, I like to deal with stuff to the best of my capacity on my own. But if I'm still feeling it a day later, then I'm going to reach out to a mate, because then I know it's affecting me at a much more profound level than I have the capacity to deal with at that time. And I need an alternative perspective to get me out of it. So Tammy is in the house. I do what I've learned as a child, to lift others up no matter my situation. So that's good. That's a good thing in most contexts, Tammy, in most contexts. So what we've talked about through this stream is that most empaths, that is a default setting. And that is great, but there's certain times if you're in a low energy vibe and you're not feeling it, and it might be someone asked you to do something that you don't particularly feel the energy or the vibe to do, but you do it anyway, and that's not necessarily helpful to yourself. Certain situations. In most situations, of course, you want to help your mates. You drop everything to go and help your mates. But it's learning the difference. It's learning when dropping everything to help your mates makes you feel good. Always do that. But sometimes you might be in a low energy zone. So let's bring this alive just so that you get exactly what I'm talking about here. So when my dad passed away, it hit me hard. It hit me really, really hard. And I didn't want to be sociable. I didn't want to go out anywhere. I didn't even really want to talk about it. I just wanted to be left alone. And there were certain people asking stuff of me, like trivial stuff, to go and help them. And it was the first time in my life I started saying no. I didn't want to do it. Just wanted to be left alone. No, I didn't want to do that. Did I want to go and help them? No, not today. I didn't. And I'd usually be the person dropping everything and making sure all the neighbours were all right. It was the first time I was actually completely comfortable with not going around trying to save everybody. It was a game changer for me because he died just at the beginning of the first lockdown. So my dad being Irish, of course, even in death, his timing was perfect. He died just in time that we had the final week of funerals where they didn't put a restriction on it. I think you could only have 10 people at funerals for a while after that when the first lockdown came. So we had a proper Irish wake, and we celebrated his life appropriately. And then 3 days later, the government said, right, you can only have 10 people at a funeral now because it's lockdown, it's COVID, all of this stuff. So his timing was perfect. But the point being, the reason I'm telling you this is because we all have low energy points. Doesn't matter how positive you are. There's going to be times in life where you're just in a low vibe. And that's okay because there's certain situations that warrant being in a low vibe. But this is for when, you're not in a serious situation, when it's not hit the fan. Now, in nursing, we used to use it all the time. Sometimes people would die and it'd be a really serious situation and somebody would just say something and we'd end up cracking up. And that in that situation, it just worked. It's a great skill set to have. Now, people that haven't worked in nursing or healthcare or with life and death situations will never understand that humor. So anyone that judges me for doing that, well, I haven't got time of day for their opinion. I do not care for the opinion of others. And that is part of the evolution of the empath as well. It's learning who to listen to and who not to. It's learning to delete certain comments without reacting to them because they're not worth listening to. So that's part of it as well. That's actually a Jedi mind trick in and of itself, once you've learned that aspect of things. So there you have it, my Jedi friends. So Tammy says, at my granddad and dad's kitchen table, I learned to always be nice, my dad and granddad would say, until it's time not to be nice, and then tell the truth, even if it hurts. Great advice, Tammy. It's great advice. Speaking your truth, especially for an empath, is a big thing. It's a big deal. And it's not only that, if you've reached a point where you need to speak your truth, the odds are they've trampled on lots of toes to get there. Oh, look, little hiccup. So speaking your truth is always a good thing, especially if you're doing it from a place of authenticity. And some people need to be straightened out. Here's the way I look at it. I've had friends have had to give me a wake-up call when I've started to move slightly into the arsehole zone, which, believe it or not, my friends, has happened occasionally, but my good friends will call me out for it, and I will thank them for it. In exactly the same way that sometimes I have to call people out, and then you realize if they're really your mate, they'll thank you for that. If they're not your mate, they're probably a narcissist. And they're off to find another victim because they don't like being called out. So what you do is you learn that speaking your truth is superpower hero because your mates will appreciate it even if it's uncomfortable for them. And everybody else, well, who gives a shit? At least you work out who's who, don't you? You work out who's who. That's how you do it, my Jedi friends. And that is the power of speaking your truth. You know, not everybody's going to have the balls to do it. Let's just call it out. Most people, they're not very authentic. They let people get away with stuff. They just tolerate bad behavior. And they tell themselves it's for the good of everyone. It's not really, because everyone's probably being ruffled. Everyone's feathers are probably being ruffled by bad behavior, and everybody's sitting there quiet. Now, this is especially true in the UK, especially England, that people will have a very high tolerance for bad behavior, that people will get away with quite a lot before anyone calls them out. It seems to be changing a little bit lately, folks, because of the lunacy that's happening in this country, but that's another conversation for another day. Anyone that's living here will know exactly what I'm talking about. We have turned into a bit of a lunatic asylum. And when do people start talking up? When do people speak up? When do people join the dissenters? When is it okay to complain? Well, there's a question, isn't it? There's a question, my Jedi friends, that is worth considering over time, especially in the light of the stuff that's happening. So there you have it, my Jedi friends. I think we've quite comprehensively covered the Jedi mind trick, or the context of this, on this little live stream. And we've certainly been taken into a few different directions, namely to Snatch Wars again. I think this is the third stream that we've ended up in Snatch Wars. So we have a new Jedi in the house. We've got Karma's loving backhand saying lunacy always turns into legacy. Well, absolutely. And for some, the legacy or turns into lunacy. It depends how drunk on the power people get, and you know what's in it for them. So yes, but that's very true. There's certainly a lot of lunacy here. So just to let you know, Karma's loving backhand. I grew up in a bona fide lunatic asylum. Like, my parents were both psychiatric nurses. So when I used to go to school, and there were bona fide lunatics there, some doing time for murder, just to bring this into context here. People in my year that are doing time for murder at school. And we used to get the piss taken out of us because we came from the grounds of a lunatic asylum. And we used to get told that we were lunatics on day release when we went to school. Little did we know, well, actually, I did know very clearly back then, that there were real bona fide lunatics in the school, going round, beating people up, ruffling feathers within the school. A lot of people got very hard going over during my school years. It was a very different era, people getting roughed up. But the real lunatics stayed away from me because I was on day release from a psychiatric hospital. I was a lunatic on day release. And that managed to instill just enough doubt in the real lunatics, and they left me alone. But the reason I tell you this, my Jedi friends, is because I used to grow up and people say, you're from a lunatic asylum, you're from a lunatic asylum, you're a nutter, you're a Shenli nutter, that's what you are, you're a nutter. And I'd say, look, the real lunacy is outside the asylum. I was saying this from about the age of 10. I had this awareness that the real lunacy is outside of the asylum, that you lot, the nutters, I'm the only sensible one amongst them. That was my line, that was my comeback. And as life has progressed, it seems that seems quite prophetic in this day and age, because let's look at it this way. Here's something to think about from someone that grew up in a bona fide lunatic asylum. In a bona fide lunatic asylum, if anyone showed any inclination to do harm to themselves or other people, then they were either sectioned, either locked up under lock and key, they were medicated, sedated with the injection, or they were electrocuted, something called ECT, or electroconvulsive therapy, which were when people were so lunatic and they tried all the medications and they didn't work, they used to put electrodes to their head and send electric shocks through their brain. And I used to witness this. It's a true story. I witnessed this. They put an old woman through ECT, electric convulsive therapy, and she pissed herself. It's so completely traumatic that they jolt them, they electrocute people. And they used to do it because everything else that they tried didn't work. They were still lunatics, they were still mad. And that's what they used to do to what they considered were lunatics. Lock them up, sedate them, electrocute them. True story. And I've seen all three in action. That's a lunatic asylum, folks. Now, go outside of the lunatic asylum, and what do you see? You see, if you show inclination to do harm to others, they'll make you a world leader. A world leader. Call in the war. Let's go to war, shall we, folks? These people are running countries. Now, no one sensible would send you to war, would they now? But this is the world that we live in, and I've grown up with this dialect, and I look at it, and all I see is lunacy. All I see is lunacy. The safest, most secure place I ever spent time in, and I can tell you this categorically, was a lunatic asylum. Mic drop. Right, see you later, folks. I had no idea we were going to go down this route, but that's the reality of the situation. So, Tom says, just watching YouTube there, mate. My algorithm is nuts. Just seeing Michael Jackson's hair on fire. He's still got one glove on, getting put in the ambulance. Well, let's face it, Tom, I'm never going to have to worry about that, am I? Not on my head anyway. Let's see. So, Karma's loving backhand. Man, wild. I imagine it gave you a thick skin, rhino skin, I'd say. Yes, I am part honey badger, Karma's loving backhand. Part honey badger for me. It definitely gives you a resilience that they just don't teach people these days. It was quite an education, shall we say. Unbelievable, fascinating truth. Well, thank you. I aim to please. I certainly have a alternative view on the world, but that's been my observation all of my life. All of my life, like where is the real lunacy? And the irony is that the lunatics run the asylum. Like, I met patients that were way more stable than my parents. They were the ones handing out the medication. I actually even said at my dad's funeral, I said the most impressive thing he did was spending so long in a psychiatric hospital and getting paid for it. Yes, lunacy is a very relative thing. And when you understand how the system works, you see it for what it is. So I have a very different view on what being a lunatic actually is and what lunacy actually is. And I think we've got it all wrong. Some of the most grounded, sensible opinions I ever heard were from psychiatric patients. Because one thing that is for certain, when somebody says you're a psychiatric case, you're a patient, you are now open to the most extreme societal judgment that is possible to get. People have diagnosed you as a lunatic. You've been put in an asylum. And once that happens, this is the bit they don't talk about. Some people they're fried. You know, they are like a vegetable version, but there is a big percentage that are they're like, well, who am I now? I don't have to hide. I don't have to hide who I am. I don't have to pretend to be someone else, which a lot of people do. A lot of people show up as somebody else in their life. We're putting on a face, putting on a front to everyone else. Like once you've been diagnosed as a lunatic and thrown in a psychiatric hospital, you lose the need to pretend that you're anyone else but yourself. And it's one of the most authentic zones you'll ever find. I've heard some of the most unbelievable truths of people that have been the other side of the psychiatric divide. And one of my very best friends has been both sides of the psychiatric divide. and is now a psychiatric nurse. And quite frankly, my Jedi friends, he's the only psychiatric nurse I would ever trust anyone that I love in the hands of. So there you go. The system is broken. The system is flawed, my Jedi friends. So in the studio with Lady Love has made an appearance. Look at that. Just after Tom commented, you two must know when each other are on the thread. So hello, my fellow lunatic. Well, hello in the studio with Lady Love. Great to have you back on my thread. This is great. And Karma's loving backhand says a lot of brilliance is deemed crazy. That's for sure. Well, in my world, lunacy and genius isn't a fine line. They are the same thing. Because let's face it, today's lunatic is tomorrow's genius. Look at it. I mean, you look at geniuses now. Plato was a genius. They made him drink hemlock because they thought he was a lunatic. The first person to say that the world is round. It's a lunatic one day, it's a genius the next. Anyone that's gone on to have any sort of profound awareness or evolve our consciousness or do things or be groundbreaking, like Newton, for example, finding the laws of physics. Anyone that's a trailblazer starts life as a lunatic. Have to go through all the dissenters, have to get all of the profound, all of the haters will come in. It's a bit like YouTube. That sort of fast tracks it now, because you get your haters in, and then eventually people will catch up, and you find your target audience. But until you find your target audience, you just have to go through this wave of lunacy, which is human opinions. Human opinions. And as my friend, who was also a psychiatric nurse, always said to me, he says, Les Nads, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one. True story. So there you go. And Tom Mack says, goody gumdrops, Harold. Go and put the kettle on, Harold. We've got Plant Lady in the house. Fantastic. Welcome back, Plant Lady. So, isn't that just what they do to make the story of the person more credible? So, possibly. So, let's face it, over time, Chinese whispers, everybody's played games of Chinese whispers. So how much of history is truly authentic? I mean, let's take somebody. I mean, I'm a history buff. I love history, absolutely love it. And I loved studying the Roman Empire, which I didn't do at school. I did it all in my own free time. Now, let's take somebody who was an absolute game changer, and there's so much to learn from his life, Julius Caesar. So there's a few things I could say about Julius Caesar, but the fact was that he documented his own journey. He had his own scribe. So whatever the real truth was, it was probably somewhere in between what he actually documented. And Caesar was almost definitely a narcissist. Just imagine a narcissist writing their own story. So everything we know about Julius Caesar was what he wanted us to know. So all of these old texts. Now you've seen how Chinese whispers works, how it changes as it goes down the line. Well, isn't that the same with history? Do we really know what happened in the past? But since we're on the subject of Julius Caesar, because I do find his story fascinating, I've even done a little video of how Julius Caesar relates to energy. And he started off, he wasn't born with a silver spoon. He didn't really have any. His family weren't prestigious or anything. He had to get his way to the top through pure charisma, and being good at what he did. Everyone, a lot of people that made it in Rome were born into it or had some sort of advantage. Caesar never did. In fact, at one stage, I love this little story about Caesar. He was kidnapped by pirates who demanded that they paid gold for it. And Caesar said to the pirates, he said, What the hell? Don't you know who I am? You should be charging 10 times this amount. Insisted they charge 10 times more. And there's the beauty. They let Caesar, they let him loose, or everyone else was there. They would let him go to Rome and pick up the bounty 10 times, bring it back to the pirates, release all of the hostages. And then he took an army and went back, killed all the pirates and got the money back. Now that's charisma, my Jedi friends. So for whatever else he was guilty of, I mean, anyone that can do that, they deserve to be remembered in the annals of history as far as I'm concerned. So here we go, back to the comments. So Tom Mack says, ha, Plant Lady, evening. Well, evening to you, Plant Lady. And Tammy says, in America, we called that game the telephone game. And Karma's loving backhand. Interesting. I didn't know that. Caesar's was a boss Sigma. His life story is fascinating. Karma's loving backhand. So for anyone that's not a history buff like me, let me give you some highlights of Caesar's life. So he was the first Caesar. He was the first Caesar. And he actually, at the time, because he came from nothing, he had no family, he had no wealth. If you had money, you had influence. If you had the family name, you had influence. Caesar had neither. He was just very charismatic and made friends with two very influential people. One was Pompey, and the other one's name escapes me at the moment, but I'll come back to it. One had money and one had status. In fact, they both had status and they both had money. But Caesar was a genius. He was an absolute genius. And he made friends with both of them and they became a really powerful triumvirate. And both of the other two thought they could use Caesar like a pawn and they sent him off as a general. Now, Caesar went off and it turned out he was a really, really accomplished general, that he was able to win battles through innovative tactics and through building defenses. He had some incredible wins and battles, and he cleaned up. His legions loved him because they kept conquering tribes and getting all their money, and him looking after his soldiers. So all of his soldiers loved him. He was very successful. He was even doing campaigns that weren't authorized by the other two. He went a little bit rogue. But then, of course, he had a massive army behind him. A massive army. So this person that was meant to be a chess piece on the board, that was meant to be manipulated by the other two, suddenly had a massive army behind him. And he'd kept the other two in check because he'd married his daughter to Pompey. So he had a bit, Pompey was distracted, and he was able to build up all of this power and influence under their nose without them calling him out. And the whole thing, for anyone that understands this period or knows this in history, there's a phrase called across the Rubicon. You don't go across the Rubicon. So I didn't realize I'd be giving a history lesson on Julius Caesar today, my Jedi friends, but I'm down another geeky rabbit hole. So Karma's loving backhand. Yeah. So with the Caesar thing, you weren't allowed to bring generals weren't allowed to bring their armies across the Rubicon because that was a rule. That was a rule. They'd made it was a rule. You're not allowed to bring your army across the Rubicon. But Caesar thought, I've got a big army, and who's going to tell me not to? So Caesar decided he was going to take his army across the Rubicon, marched right the way into Rome, and basically took over. And they all scrambled out of Rome because they knew they couldn't fight him. And there were a few wars where they went and they assembled armies to come back at Caesar. But he was a very accomplished general. And when they came to get him, he beat all of them. He beat off all comers. And eventually he went back to Rome. I think he was still relatively young. And he was the first ever Caesar. He just said, right, well, fuck it. Nobody's going to argue with me now. I seem to have supreme power. The people loved him. This was another thing. He went back into Rome. He was incredibly popular with the people because he fed them, gave them money. He looked after the people, so the people loved him. The only people that didn't love him were the Senate, because they'd been undermined by this upstart. And that's why they killed him. That's why they all stabbed him. They all stabbed Caesar. But here's the other beauty of Caesar. Caesar didn't have any kids. So what he identified was this a chap called Octavian. I think he was a nephew or something like that, a cousin. But he realized that this was a really, really smart kid. And so he set the succession plan that he wanted this kid to be the next Caesar. Now, Mark Antony didn't like that at all, but it turned out that Octavian, who went on to be Augustus Caesar, or the philosopher, the philosopher, he was the most successful Caesar ever. Now, some people from history might argue that that wasn't the case, but he certainly had a long reign. He managed to bring peace to the realm. He had a few setbacks on the journey, but I mean, he was generally, and he was a philosopher. He was a really smart guy. So there you go. Caesar left a legacy behind him that wasn't necessarily. A lot of people messed up the lives by bringing kids that should never have been. They should never have taken up the mantle on all of this stuff. So there you go. I could talk about this all day, folks. And Karma's loving backhand says, I love it. Please continue. Well, you've just given me license to take this down a completely different route. But yeah, you look it up. The things went a little bit wrong after Augustus, because his son was an absolute reprobate. See, he had a son, and that's when things started to go wrong. So yes, but that's a fascinating part of history, and what Caesar did was unbelievable. Unbelievable it was. I mean, it really was. The whole Roman Empire is worth studying for the stuff. I mean, because they were ruthless, they were nasty, and let's face it, us Brits, they came and ravaged us. Absolutely, give us. There should be there should be ramifications. Those Romans, they weren't very nice. They were exceptionally not nice at the time. But anyway, my dad had a fascination with history, which he passed on to me. So that's why I took it down this route. My Jedi friends, who would have believed it? So there, you've had a little mini history lesson. And for my next one, we will talk about the Greek Emperor. We'll talk about Alexander. So there you go. And Karma's loving backhand, leaders bringing peace to the realm, is a lesson we didn't learn in today's age, I guess. Well, in fairness, Karma's loving backhand, when I said he brought peace to the realm, it's not entirely true. I mean, there was probably more peace during his years than any of the others. But yes, if you look up Arminius, and that's also somebody that I talked about, the Romans had this horrible habit of conquering tribes and then taking their leaders' kids to bring them up as Romans, as Roman generals. And they did that in Germany. They conquered this tribe, and then they took one of their eldest sons. They took both of their sons and brought them up in Rome as Roman generals, and one was called Arminius. And at the zenith of the Roman power, this guy went up into the German legions, led to legions in Germany. And he saw what the Romans were doing to his old tribes, and he decided, right, let's stitch them up. And he was responsible for one of the most brutal massacres of 2 Roman legions. They got them marching through the forest under false pretenses, and absolutely massacred 2 legions. So when I say peace, it wasn't all peaceful. Karma's loving backhand. They had one of the biggest upsets, and then they sent someone up there to get retribution, Germanicus, who was absolutely savage. So yes, it wasn't quite peaceful, but I mean, relatively to most of the Roman generals or Caesars, he was better than most, shall we say. But that was all relative at the time when they were at the zenith of their power. They really were. They were. That was as good as it got for the Western Roman Empire. So anyway, what a segue I've gone down, and I'm looking at the time. I'm now going down a route where I didn't see it going, my Jedi friends. So I think I'm going to end it there, unless if you've got any requests, if you want me to go down any other rabbit holes on my next stream, I'm open to requests. And yes, you've caught me in my history geekery today. My history geekery. It's not really energy or Jedis. We've gone down the Roman Empire history lesson. Who would have seen that coming, my Jedi friends? So there you go. There you go. Something a little bit different today. So luckily I did summarize what I actually meant to be talking about within the first 5 minutes of the video. If you're still watching now, then kudos to you. Kudos to you, my Jedi friends, for sticking with the program for this long. And if you are logging out now and you want a laugh and you haven't seen it yet, then just type Snatch Wars into the algorithm and you will have fun, my Jedi friends, especially if you've seen the film Snatch and Star Wars. You will appreciate that as much as me and Tom did. I had no idea just how much Tom appreciated it until reading the comments of this particular thread. But kudos, it's been good. It's been good catching up with you as well, my Jedi friends. Thanks for coming back. And Tammy says, thank you for keeping it real as always, Adam. Well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, Tammy. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for so many of my Jedi friends coming back, the usual suspects. And Karma's loving backhand, a first timer on the thread. Thanks. I need to dust up on my history. Take care. Sorry, Lowell, didn't mean to sidekick you. Well, Karma's loving backhand, you will find out if you come back to these threads. They can go down whatever path I'm taken down. So that's actually that's why I like the lives. I riff with it. So there's no such thing. You definitely don't need to apologize. And anyone that doesn't want to learn about history will get themselves off the thread. But interestingly enough, I noticed that the numbers while we were talking about that stuff actually stayed fairly stable. So it clearly reined in the Jedis. They wanted to hear about Caesar's exploits and what the Roman Empire did to us. What did the Romans ever do to us? And if you're a Monty Python fan, you'll appreciate that particular line. But I shall leave that for another day. Another time, another day, my Jedi friends. It has been a pleasure and it's been good fun tonight. And where did the time go? Where did the time go? It has just flashed by in an instant. We've covered all sorts, from Jedis to Snatch Wars to the Roman Empire today, my Jedi friends. It has been quite a rush. So thanks for joining in. Thanks for your good humor. Thanks for sticking with the program. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, which I expect most people on here already are, but it goes without saying, if you're still watching now, then subscribe, because these can be coming fairly regularly now. And for all of you that know this, if there's any topics you want me to talk about, just leave it in the comments and I'll make my next live stream about that. Who knows, we may even go down a mad history route and I'll try something different. And also, I'm doing a little social experiment. If anyone's still watching me now, I'm starting up a backup channel just to have fun with and to report news that is completely under the radar, but more importantly, to have fun. And it's called Adam Shaw TV. And if you can go there, I've got 9 subscribers. I've got 9 subscribers so far. So I need to get to 50 subscribers before they're going to let me loose on the live streams. And then I'm just going to have some fun, like riffing with the news headlines that are going under the radar. And let's face it, it could be like Buckaroo here in the UK, talking about news that no one else is reporting, because you can do time for reporting the wrong thing at the moment, my Jedi friend. So it will be an emotional ride. We'll see how far we get. Anyway, enough of that. Enough of that, Adam. Thank you for joining me. Have a great week, my Jedi friends, and I will be back soon. Exactly when, I don't know, because I just roll with the energy and I do these impromptu. So if you're quick enough to get back on the next stream, I shall see you then. My Jedi friends, thank you so much. And Plant Lady says, flying by the seat of your pants. Absolutely, Plant Lady. Well, you've been on enough of these to know that's exactly the way that I roll, because it's more fun that way, and we like to be unprepared for these mad threads, and be fluid enough to go wherever the energy takes me. So that's the way we roll. So on that bombshell, I shall love you and leave you. Wish you all a fantastic week. I've even forgotten the actual thread. It was the Jedi mind trick. Well, the Jedi mind trick is telling you I'm going to talk about Jedi mind tricks and end up talking about Snatch Wars. There you go. There's a Jedi mind trick that you didn't see coming. Anyway, take care, my Jedi friends. And until the next time, I shall see you soon.